What's going on, everyone? I am Troy from Arcs on Media. I know I have done a few videos in the past from different angles about shows that completely ignore lore or movie series that completely ignore lore, and I've went back and forth with people on that in comment sections and on social media and whatever about whether or not lore is important, about whether or not representing, like if you're taking a book or a comic or something and adapting that, if you have some sort of source material into a show or a film, why that's important. I've talked about that from different angles and in different ways, and there are ways to alter what you're putting on screen and being respectful of the source material while also not completely ignoring it, trampling on the meaning of it, and all that stuff. That's why, people say The Lord of the Rings isn't exactly page for page out of the book. Like, they've changed some things. Sure, yeah, but it kept the same spirit by the little changes that were made. They didn't change the meaning of things. They didn't really alter it in any significant way that made anything worse or massively different. It was still very much keeping in the spirit of the original Lord of the Rings books by J.R.R. Tolkien. And it's definitely the greatest page to screen adaptation of all time. But even past that, we've had a lot of that lately. Everybody's looking for their new big fantasy epic. They want to, ever since Game of Thrones was created and adapted the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, it was adapted for the small screen for HBO and became a massive hit, like the books, and then they just kind of fed off of each other with success. Everybody's been looking for that for their network. They want a new one. That's why we have, from Amazon Prime, they did The Wheel of Time. They got The Rings of Power now. On Netflix, they've got The Witcher, and every once in a while they throw one out there. And then even you've got Disney that tried reviving Willow as a series. That bombed out so hard they completely wiped it off the network. You can't even watch it now unless you know the right websites to go to. But regardless, we're going to be talking about an angle from an actual writer who has a little bit of experience in successful book, like fantasy book writing and making it work. And he even adapted the works of the original author of The Wheel of Time, and he finished the series because the original author could not. We're going to be talking about some comments from Brandon Sanderson about some of these on-screen adaptations. But before we get into all of it, if you guys could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell, it'd be super cool of you. Again, I am Troy from Arcs on Media. Let's get into the story.
Arcs on Media.
Acclaimed fantasy writer slams Rings of Power and Netflix not listening to The Witcher's Henry Cavill. One of the most successful authors in the realm of fantasy, Brandon Sanderson, has slammed recent adaptations, such as Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, while questioning why Netflix didn't listen to Henry Cavill regarding the direction of The Witcher. The writer, who is best known for his Consmere universe, I don't know, I've never heard it pronounced out loud, so I don't know how to pronounce it, in which the Mistborn series and the Stormlight Archives are set, but also crafted superhero stories and completed the final 3 installments of The Wheel of Time, took issue with how epic fantasy stories, while explaining why they have never been, so far anyway, adaptations of his beloved works. Sorry, it's clunky sentence structure there, and that was just like the longest freaking run-on sentence of all time. Either way, he did the Mistborn series, which I think is only 3 books I wanted to get into. I heard it was pretty good. The Stormlight Archives are very large books, and they go on forever. I started reading the first book, and I'm like a third of the way through. I'll get back to it eventually, but I've got other things I'm working on right now, plus my own books that I'm working on. But it's good. It's good stuff. He's a good writer. I've not read any of The Wheel of Time, his books or the books that came before him from the previous author that created it. So I don't know. But anyway, he's talking about why he hasn't allowed them to make his stuff into fantasies yet, which yeah, is a big omission considering how popular he is and how I mentioned in the opening how everybody's thirsting for more fantasy now, epic fantasies on their streaming services. But anyway, he spoke to Polygon, and he said that the Rings of Power and the Wheel of Time have not gone as well as he'd hoped, adding, quote, "Streaming has had a big problem with epic fantasy, and this has me worried. Rings of Power and Wheel of Time have not gone as well as I would have hoped. Shadow and Bone lasted only 2 seasons after a very strong first season. Streaming hasn't figured out epic fantasy yet." Kind of hard to disagree. Maybe this is a holdover from network television days where they're trying to make the episodes fit into the structure of how episodic television used to work, rather than filming an 8-hour movie and showing it in chunks. But maybe that's a bad idea. All I know is, right now, we haven't seen really great epic fantasy film television since the early mid-seasons of Game of Thrones. $50 million per episode has not done it. So it's not a matter of the money they're throwing at it. The other thing we haven't seen is any of these shows really take off to the extent that I would like with the general public. Yeah, to that point, yeah, they keep shoveling more and more and more money into these shows. The Rings of Power is like the most expensive television show ever made, and you got better CGI in the films back in 20 years ago that had a fraction of their budget. But this show, just, not only is the writing awful, the costuming is super mid, the backdrops are, again, super mid, and just everything looks CGI green screened and not in a good way. The graphics are bad. The worst! Game of Thrones, like he makes reference to the early and mid seasons of Game of Thrones. Obviously, I think it was by season 6, I want to say, it kind of fell off. 7 and 8 were just abysmal, especially 8. 7 was really bad, but you know, the show just ended horribly. Yep. It was an event. Like, it was water cooler talk. People loved that show. Even people who had never picked up a George R.R. Martin book, who barely even knew it was a book series. They loved that freaking show, and they were obsessed with it, and it was a cultural movement. Unlike we've seen from any of these other epic fantasies that they try to make. The Witcher seasons 1 and 2 were pretty big to an extent as far as Netflix stuff goes, but that's about it. It's cooled every single season. Season 1 was pretty good. It got people talking, got people interested. Season 2, some interest was picking up while some was also waning. And then by season 3, it's like, who the hell watched that? Like, I watched it, I enjoyed most of it, but most people just kind of fell off and they didn't care anymore. And especially when the news came out that Henry Cavill would not be returning, they were like, I don't care. Done. The Wheel of Time, like, except for the occasional commercial I've seen for it, the trailers for seasons 1 and 2 that would pop up on YouTube or X, I know nothing about it. I watched the first season and couldn't tell you a damn thing about it. Not a character name. I can kind of vaguely tell you some of the storylines, but that's not good. Your show left no lasting impact on me whatsoever, and The Wheel of Time is beloved in the fantasy world. Like, I never read the books, but I know of them, and I was excited to watch the show. I'm like, oh, okay, they're finally adapting it, because a lot of people said it couldn't be adapted for the big or small screen, but they tried, and it didn't do well. Season 2, I watched episode 1 and got bored with it. Boring! And now, are they even doing a season 3? It was a very long book series you could have got a lot of play out of, and they just crapped the bed. I don't understand what's so hard about adapting these shows, and like Sanderson said, it's not an issue of money. You have a built-in audience with a lot of these, and they don't care. They're like, oh, we'll drag you in by using the IP name that you love, but we're going to not make this anything like what you like about it. We're going to hollow it out and wear this IP like a skin suit. I've talked about that multiple times. It's not they might tune in initially and stick around for a couple of episodes, but like Rings of Power, they lost like 70 to 80% of their audience before, like from episode 1 to how many, they have 6 or 8 episodes, whatever. That's terrible.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
And now I don't know the ratings that season 2 did. I've heard good and bad things, but after season 1, I just don't care. But let's get into his other comments about The Witcher here, specifically about the fact that they should have listened to Henry Cavill. Netflix should have listened to visionary Henry Cavill about the direction of The Witcher. Sanderson went on to heap praise on the Netflix animated series Arcane, and after revealing that he's now working on an animated version of Tress and of the Emerald Sea, and thinks Mistborn could work as a film series, the writer revealed that he would love to adapt Stormlight, but isn't sure if it would work out after seeing the likes of The Rings of Power and The Witcher falter. And his biggest problem with the latter, Netflix didn't listen to visionary Henry Cavill. Quote, I would absolutely pick Stormlight, and I would do it on one of the streaming services. With an unlimited budget and unlimited creative control, I think I could make something really good. I do too. But who knows? I mean, The Rings of Power essentially had that, and it's not very good. It's fine. It's not fine. It's trash. But it is. But is it the thing that you want? I mean, I really think the key members of that visionary filmmaker, Epic Fantasies. Fantasy has responded poorly to too much oversight from above. I think that was The Witcher's problem. You had that visionary, it was Henry Cavill, and they didn't want to listen to him. So there you go.
It's true.
Of course, fans of The Rings of Power and the Wheel of Time adaptations, both of which now have multiple seasons, would likely dispute what Sanderson says about the fantasy shows. But considering there were several reports that Cavill and the creative behind The Witcher were constantly in disagreement, and that could possibly be why the Man of Steel star walked away from the show, it's certainly interesting to hear Sanderson's insight and possible confirmation that this was indeed the case. I mean, Sanderson wouldn't know unless he's like BFFs with Henry Cavill, which I highly doubt. But regardless, yeah, that is the issue. The thing is, Henry Cavill was one of those lore nerds that, I mean, if you would have strayed a little bit from it, I'm sure he would have been fine. But they basically told him, dude, go pound sand. Go out there and say your lines, puppet. Like, we don't care about your opinion. We don't care what you like. You being an actual fan of The Witcher. And everybody's come back to me about stuff like that is always, well, Andrei Sapkowski doesn't really care, the author of the books. He wrote The Witcher just as an aside to make extra money in some like little pulp fantasy whatever. He sold the rights off to CD Projekt Red for games. He sold the rights off to Netflix for the show. He doesn't care as long as he's getting paid. He mocks the idea of lore and whatever. Dude, I really couldn't care less. He's wrong. Okay, yes, he's the author and the creator of The Witcher, and it's great, but to sit there and mock people who like your stuff and like your lore and your world that you've built, and you're just making fun of that, and it's like, I really don't care about any of this, it's just making me money, I don't, as long as I pay my bills, whatever. Dude, like, go F yourself, man. Like, Henry Cavill was a legit fan. He said Geralt was his dream role, and he wouldn't leave unless they did what exactly they did on Netflix with the Netflix show. And it's sad. It's sad for legit Witcher fans. And yes, I enjoy the show. I've said that before, but I feel bad for people who really wanted a legitimate like page to screen adaptation for The Witcher, just like I feel bad for the actual fans of the Wheel of Time books. And I'm a fan of The Lord of the Rings and all things Middle-earth. And we didn't get that.
Nope.
That's why I kind of crapped on the War of the Rohirrim, because I'm like, dude, this is anime, Lord of the Rings, fan fiction is all it is. And we're kind of done with that. and they're exhausting fantasy IP at this point, and it looks like Sanderson is going to hold on with a death grip to his, which I don't blame him. I'm writing fantasy books myself, and if somebody wanted to adapt them into a show or a film, I'd be honored, but at the same time, I'd be like, I need to see some, like, proof that you're not going to just do whatever the F you want with it, hollow out my story, and just make it your own. Like, sorry, buddy, it's mine. Just like Sanderson. Sanderson's a very successful author. He's been around for a while now. There's no reason he should be backing down on this point. But either way, I want to know what you guys think about it. If you comment down below, I would like to know, do you guys care about lore? Do you guys like any of these shows? Are there any other fantasy IPs that you think that they're soon to destroy? Or any that you think would be good to put on screen and adapt? I really like House of the Dragon. I think they're doing well with that. It's a little divisive at times, but I think it's really good. Divisive amongst the fans about whether or not it's, it's not exactly like it is in the books, which I get it. But the way Martin wrote the book that it's based on and the lore that it's based on was more of like from unreliable narrators. So you could kind of get away with altering that a bit to make it spicier. You know what I mean? So either way, comment down below, join in the discussion. I'd love to hear from you. This article, by the way, if you want to read it yourself, is linked down in the video description. Go to MovieWeb and go check that out. Also, for the rest of you, if you could please share this video around to everyone you know, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to stay up to date every time I post brand new content. That would be super cool of you. I'd appreciate it. All of you beautiful, lovely people out there. My name is Troy for Marks on Media, and I'll see you next time.